NTSB hearings are scheduled. We spoke exclusively with Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg today.
He says even before the investigative hearings, the department already rolled out changes to rail safety. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent Rachel Knapp had the one-on-one conversation with Buttigieg. She's joining us live from the U.S. Capitol with what was said. Rachel, good evening.
Good evening, Mike and Eva. So Secretary Buttigieg says they are watching the NTSB hearings very closely, but as these hearings continue, that basically they're proposing a new rule that they believe will help people who are responding to these hazmat rail disasters. As the National Transportation Safety Board kicked off a two-day investigative hearing, we spoke exclusively with the Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg.
Well, these hearings are very important. They can get technical, but they are a key part of how NTSB gathers the information that will allow for recommendations that could shape and change policy.
Buttigieg says after the derailment, the DOT took a number of steps to improve rail safety, like executing nearly 4,000 rail inspections across the country and investing more than $500 million from the bipartisan infrastructure law to improve hundreds of at-grade crossings. But that's not all they're doing.
The latest news that we're making this week is a proposed rule that would create new requirements for getting first responders information proactively when a railroad is moving hazardous material and there's an incident. The basic idea here is that it can take time in those emergency response contexts where every minute matters. It can take time to track down the personnel on the train to figure out what was where, what was in what tank car. We want to make sure that the railroads understand a requirement to push that information proactively to the first responders, firefighters, others who are going to be involved in the response so that they know immediately what it is they're dealing with.
Buttigieg says they are also looking to increase training for first responders, modernize rail systems, and hold rail companies accountable.
Frankly, you can't expect multi-billion-dollar corporations to do all of these things voluntarily. There have to be requirements, and those requirements have to be backed up with real enforceability.
Buttigieg tells me that Norfolk Southern has made some changes in the way that they help identify any safety concerns, but those changes are not required by law, and so he's looking to Congress to pass some legislation that would help railroad companies create more regulations and to improve railroad safety, as well as help the department enforce some of those regulations. Mike, Eva, back to you.
Rachel, thanks. And that legislation the Secretary is referring to is co-sponsored by both of Pennsylvania's Senators Bob Casey and John Fetterman.
And the bill also has bipartisan support, but so far it hasn't made much movement in Congress.